What's up, everybody? Welcome back. We are here with some more NFL DFS picks and lineup advice, this time for the single game showdown slate on DraftKings and FanDuel. Monday Night Football, Detroit Lions, Las Vegas Raiders. Welcome. I'm Brian Jester, co founder here at Occupy Fantasy, single game $1 million winner to give you the picks, strategies, and tips you need to take down tonight's showdown contest. If you're new here, welcome. We do a lot of these videos for NFL. I put out these videos every Monday and Thursday, specifically for Showdown. And in these videos, we talk about the injuries that impact the slate, discuss low-risk lineup construction tips, high-risk strategies to win the biggest contest on both DraftKings and FanDuel, and just general Showdown tips to help get you to the top of those contest leaderboards. So let's start with the injuries, and we'll start with the visiting Raiders. Now, Jimmy Garoppolo is back this week. Brian Hoyer got the spot start last week, but Jimmy G is back and expected to start and have no limitations. So he's back tonight. Let's put him in the lineup just to keep track of him here. So Jimmy G in the lineup. Daniel Carlson, their kicker, is officially questionable. Didn't practice much this week. They did sign another kicker. That kicker is McCourt here, James McCourt. I had to click his name because I truly do not know his first name. I have not heard of James McCourt in my life until about an hour ago. So James McCourt signed to the practice squad, which is nice for us because we'll know officially if Carlson is out tonight because they have to activate McCourt from the practice squad by 4 p.m. Eastern today. So if you see the McCourt elevation, you can pretty much be guaranteed that Carlson will not kick tonight. If McCourt is not elevated, likely means, it doesn't likely mean, it guarantees that Carlson will be the kicker. So just monitor the news this afternoon to know which of the Raiders kickers you need to play if you're going to go that route. Now, on the Detroit side, we got some news yesterday that Amon-Ra St. Brown was added late to the injury report with an illness. He's officially questionable. Illness going around the entire league, seemingly. Patrick Mahomes had the flu. Certainly impacted him in his performance yesterday. We don't know how, if at all, it'll impact Amon-Ra St. Brown. He may not play. We'll have to see here. We just assume that when a guy is added with an illness that they do end up playing, often they do end up playing. But let's monitor. They do have some receivers on the practice squad they could call up to replace him if he's out, to help fill that void if he's out. I think he'll play. And just judging by our lack of information, I would not let the illness impact your decision to roster Amon-Ra St. Brown. If you have other reasons not to play him or you have reasons to play him, I wouldn't let the illness impact your decision making. In that wide receiver room in Detroit, Marvin Jones decided to step away from the team. Those two mutually parted ways this week. And while Jones has been buried on the depth chart in recent weeks, it still opens up a couple more snaps for their other guys, Josh Reynolds, Khalif Raymond, and Jamison Williams, who's been seeing more snaps lately as well. Now, Detroit is also missing two offensive linemen, center Frank Ragnow, their guard Jonah Jackson. So 2 of the 5 offensive linemen, their starting offensive linemen missing, isn't great. Now, they're still touchdown favorites here at home against the Raiders. And it is the interior guys. Fortunately, not a tackle that is missing against Max Crosby in his ferocious pass rush. But still, you never want to see 2 offensive linemen out. And if you're looking for reasons to get different in this game, that could be a reason to justify either playing the Raiders defense or playing more Raiders in your lineups. And I think that's it. David Montgomery is still out. Let's not forget about that. Still out. Jahmyr Gibbs will be the lead back, the bell cow back. Played all but like 10 snaps last week, even in a blowout game script for Jahmyr Gibbs. So massive workload expected for him as David Montgomery remains sidelined. Let me double check here and make sure I got them all. Yes, got all the injuries. Now let's talk about low-risk contests. 50-50s, double-ups, head-to-heads, contests where you just have to beat half the field to double your money. Really low-risk environment. And it's really interesting tonight because longtime viewers will know what I'm about to say. If you read the Showdown guide on our site, or we look at historical data and what wins showdown contests for NFL. We try to lock up all the scoring in low-risk contests, play both quarterbacks, play both running backs, and or play values that stick out. And generally, that's a little bit difficult or dicey when we have stud receivers on the slate like St. Brown, like, let's get both teams in here, like Devontae Adams. But the pricing is so nice tonight that we really can fit in those core 4, the 2 running backs and the 2 quarterbacks. If we just look at, let's say, Goff, Garoppolo, Jahmyr Gibbs, Josh Jacobs, both running backs being under 9K is super nice for low-risk settings. That leaves 4K left per player. A lot of different routes you can go here. Now, again, it is scary leaving out Devontae Adams, leaving out Amon-Ra St. Brown, but their ownership isn't going to be nearly as much as it would be on another slate. they're going to cannibalize each other's ownership a little bit. We have the Q tag for St. Brown. We have Devontae Adams as a 7-point underdog. They're both kind of pricey. It's not like they're going to be super popular. If we go to our Occupy model, OccupyFantasy.com ranks every player on FanDuel and DraftKings, and has projected ownership as well. Now for most sports, we automate the ownership process, but we have a little bit more hands-on feel when it comes to NFL Showdown. And we see St. Brown, the fourth highest projected flex ownership on DraftKings, and we see Devontae Adams all the way down at seventh. We're looking at the DK percentage column here. So not like Adams is a top 2 projected guy or St. Brown's a top 2 projected guy. So we can feel a little bit better about fading them in our low risk lineups. So if we have 4K left per player, there are 2 guys that stand out as likely to be popular in smaller GPPs and in low risk contests that help you save salary on DraftKings specifically. One is Khalif Raymond. Will play 10 plus snaps, has known to get some deep balls, $2,800. He projects decently well. We think he'll teeter around that 20% mark in most contests, in larger contests. And you also have Trey Tucker down here. Let's find him, $600. They've really transitioned him into their full-time number 3 wide receiver. Hunter Renfrow in the background now. Tucker has ran 20 plus routes in back-to-back weeks after not seeing the field much through the first 5 weeks. Getting targets, let's look here. 5 targets in the last 2 games, which is more than double what he had the first 5 weeks. Also get some design end arounds. They absolutely love giving this dude an end around at least once per game. It seems like watching the game. Before, when they put him in the game, like, all right, here comes the Trey Tucker end around. But now they're using him a lot more, so you can't really, it's not really predetermined when they're going to give him an end around. Either way, at $600, going to be on the field, likely to score a couple points, is an excellent way to save salary. So if you play Trey Tucker, 7,400. You could play Sam Laporta. That's really nice. If you play Khalif Raymond, let's put him in the lineup if I can find him. 5,200. You could play kicker or defense. That's fine. We like that in low risk as well. The other option here, since Gibbs is going to be mega popular and could be the highest scoring player on the slate, one of the safest floors, you could captain him and save some salary, then play golf at flex. That gives you a few $100 to work with, 900 extra bucks to work with if you want to upgrade at another position. Because if you play Tucker here, let's look here. If I can find him once again, I promise. There he is. Okay. 83. Now we could play Jacoby Myers, right? Or if we play Khalif Raymond, we could play potentially Josh Reynolds. So it's really interesting. So while typically we would not recommend low-risk contests when you have to fade Amon-Ra St. Brown, Devontae Adams, the way the ownership and dynamics shakes out tonight, I think you can. And this gives you a really high floor lineup to get just past that 50% mark in those low-risk contests. The same actually applies over on FanDuel, surprisingly not. And the pricing is extra interesting on FanDuel. We have Jimmy Garoppolo as one of the cheapest starting quarterbacks you'll ever see in FanDuel. Single game contest outside of a random backup quarterback starting. Just 11,500. Now, Jimmy G is not the most dynamic quarterback, we know. But 11,500, he's an easy low-risk play, just given the half-point PPR scoring. We also have Amon-Ra St. Brown, 15.5. Here is interesting because you have to decide between Jacobs and Adams. And while on DraftKings we had such a big price difference, if we look here, Adams 10,800, Jacobs 8,400. We're talking about a $2,400 price difference. It's the opposite on FanDuel, where Adams is $2K cheaper. So you almost have to play Adams. And if you're playing both sites, it's a great way to get exposure to different guys in low risk contests. So you play Adams here, which again, you won't see a starting quarterback at 11.5 very often. You won't see Devontae Adams at 12.5, rarely ever at this point in his career. You play Jared Goff. Jahmyr Gibbs also super cheap at 12K. That leaves you 9K. You can play whatever you want here. Kicker, defense, whatever you want to play. This is the way to go. It's really nice, again, if you are playing both sides tonight, you can mix and match the risk and the players that you're taking. That way, and you can still hit both. That's the nice thing about it. So pricing, extremely viable for low-risk contests tonight. I would have a large portion of my allocation in low-risk contests tonight just because of what the pricing allows us to do and how we expect the game to play out. All right. Now, we usually don't spend that much time on low-risk contests, but such a nice low-risk slate. Let's transition to high-risk contests. Leagues, GPPs, satellites. You have to beat a lot of people to win a lot of money. Let's talk about some strategies that I'm thinking about there. We'll come back to FanDuel in a second. I know a lot of you play on FanDuel. You've asked for FanDuel-specific tips. We've been putting more and more in here. Don't want to forget about you all. So we'll come back to FanDuel in a second. Let's start with DraftKings high-risk contests first. Let me get a drink here. Now, a couple ideas I'm thinking about Now, if you've been around the block watching our Occupy Fantasy videos, you've been in our Discord, you know the first idea. Detroit, big favorites. If you look at what the field is going to do, builds are going to lean in Detroit's favor. So whether that's 5-1, five players from Detroit, one from Vegas, 4-2, 3-3 with a Lions captain. Same goes for FanDuel as well, not just DraftKings, where we're going to see more Lions than Raiders in lineups. Again, if you think the offensive line may be an issue, if you think the scoring may be concentrated, if St. Brown's limited, a lot of different ways it could play out. Vegas is more competitive. Then you play more Raiders in your lineups than you would Lions. That's one way just to automatically get different and not have to worry about much else, because there aren't going to be many lineups that have four Raiders or especially five Raiders or even three Raiders with a Raiders captain. So that's an easy way just to think about getting different if you're not sure about ownership leverage or some other salary reasons to get different. Now, if we talk about smaller GPPs, as I mentioned in low risk, we think Trey Tucker, and especially Trey Tucker, but also Khalif Raymond, if they're going to be popular in low risk, going to be even more popular in small field GPPs. Now, as we get to the larger contests, their ownership is going to shrink because they don't necessarily have the upside to win the larger GPPs. Sure, can they? Sure, for sure. But if they score just a couple points, that's not enough to win a larger GPP usually, but it is enough to win a small field GPP. So just keep in mind the elevated ownership and what they allow you to do with Tucker and Raymond in your small field GPPs. However, I will say, as we saw with the low risk salary isn't that much of an issue tonight. Sure, they allow you to upgrade some positions, but it's you can go without playing either one of those guys and have a really balanced high floor, high ceiling lineup, even in smaller GPPs. So just keep in mind that as you are building tonight. Now, another note for salary. It's a really weird salary. I'm really not sure what they were doing with salary this time, because if you've been playing Showdown, you know that DraftKings has been absolutely obsessed with pricing kickers over 5K. That is not the case tonight. We actually get a kicker under 5K. Michael Badgley, 4,800. We get one of the Raiders kickers at 4,200. So kickers a little more viable tonight. Usually they've been under 20% owned almost every single time when the kicker's been 5K or more. Now that they're under 4K, we should see both these guys eclipse 20%. We'll see Carlson. Maybe the field gets confused about his status and he gets low owned. If McCourt is in over Carlson, we know for sure the field has a bias in not playing kickers that they do not know. McCourt qualifies because I didn't even know who he was. So if McCourt is the kicker tonight, expect him to have lower ownership dramatically than Riley Patterson. So that is an excellent way to get different if McCourt is indeed the kicker tonight for Las Vegas, and that goes on both sides. If McCourt's even in the player pool, let's see. He is. Okay. Okay. So he is 5K tonight. That really changes things up. So if McCourt is the kicker, we talk about not punting in low risk contests or small field GPPs. But if you did something like this, Gibbs, Garoppolo, 7K per player, you wouldn't want to take a point or two from the final spot. But if McCourt is the kicker at 5K, this is really nice. I mean, you could even play Devontae Adams. You could do a lot here if McCourt is the kicker in all contest types. If he's in smaller contests, low risk and small field GPPs, just lock him in, even if he scores 1 to 2 extra points. So definitely monitor that 4 o'clock news. We think Carlson will play, but just monitor that for sure. Okay, back to DraftKings. And the other guy I want to talk about here, the other guys, I guess, in general, are the Detroit secondary wide receivers. If St. Brown's limited whatsoever, we don't think he will be, but if he is. But Jameson Williams is the guy that's super interesting. 26 routes last week. I think his career high, if I'm not mistaken, in routes run, and definitely is high this season. If you look at expected fantasy points last week, had the biggest difference between expected and actual fantasy points because he scored 0. He was expected based on his targets, where they were on the field, how deep they were, how many he got. He was expected to score 17, 18 fantasy points last week. He scored 0. Now, that's not necessarily meaning he's going to score 17 tonight, but when we see him at 5K and his projection isn't that great around the industry, he's going to be less than 20% owned. So automatically love playing a high upside guy who hasn't been performing up to expectations when he has low ownership. That is the best time to play these types of guys. We saw DeAndre Hopkins was on our underperforming wide receiver list for the main slate yesterday. Was like 1% owned and put up 35 points or whatever it was. Those are when you want to play those guys. Jameson qualifies for that tonight. Now, there have been some unnerving comments from the coaching staff after the game. We got to get him up to speed. It's been slower than we expected. But they also said, let's get him in a groove, get the ball in his hands, which could mean more design looks, more guaranteed points, which is something you'd love to see if you do play Jameson Williams tonight. Probably my favorite GPP play on both sites, under 20% owned. So Jameson's a guy that I will be heavily invested in tonight, and just kicking the door in when he goes 0 for 6 on targets on deep balls once again. But Williams is the guy. Reynolds also going to be relatively low owned, around that 20% mark. He's a guy that's going to go overlooked just based on his mid-tier pricing. And we already talked about Khalif Raymond. I would say if they're not happy with Jameson Williams, I know they want to develop him, but they're also in win now mode as well. And if for some reason they think that he's not ready, let's get more snaps to someone else, that'll likely be Khalif Raymond as the guy who benefits more. So I would probably have a rule of max one of Raymond and Jameson Williams in my lineups because they likely cannibalize each other's opportunities. The other guy, if Amon-Ra is out or if Jameson Williams is limited or they don't want to give him as much playing time, it's Antoine Green. $200. Played a lot of snaps last week. Didn't score any points on it, but a guy that puts up some points in preseason, so he is capable of scoring a $200 play, really only for the largest contest, assuming that Amon-Ra St. Brown is in the lineup. And also, again, we talked about Jahmyr Gibbs having massive ownership and a likely massive workload. You look at his workload last week; it was just insane. Let's pull it up really quickly, and we see just 11 carries because they were trailing basically immediately out of the gate, but 10 targets as well, 27 fantasy points, and again, 90% of the snaps or whatever it was. If they want to limit his touches some as a rookie running back coming off a huge workload game, if he's ineffective, I don't know, there are ways this plays out, but Craig Reynolds, an incredible pivot, and I would say at $3,200, he's a little bit too expensive to play both those guys in the same lineup unless you're playing for an absolute Detroit blowout, which is possible. But Craig Reynolds in larger contests as a pivot away from Gibbs in lineups where you're not playing Gibbs is an excellent idea to benefit from any chaos that happens in their workload split in that Detroit backfield. All right, I think that's it for DraftKings. I would say I don't really feel super strongly about any of the guys I captain. I would mix and match, assuming you're making multiple lineups. Split it a little bit. We do see Detroit heavy, so just keep that in mind if you want to build a little more Vegas heavy. But all these guys can be optimal captains tonight. I personally don't really have a strong stand on any one of them in a single entry, or if you want to go all in on one particular captain. However, on FanDuel, a FanDuel specific strategy for tonight, all the stuff I just talked about applies here as well. But at MVP, we see this phenomena pretty often in FanDuel single game GPPs when guys are lower priced, and they end up with higher flex ownership, like we will undoubtedly see tonight with Davante Adams, with Jahmyr Gibbs, with Jimmy Garoppolo. Gibbs is the exception here. He'll be popular at MVP. But Adams and Garoppolo won't. Even Jacobs won't be as 7-point underdogs. So for me tonight, the easy leverage, while everyone's going to play Jared Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown to an extent, and definitely Jahmyr Gibbs at MVP, when you have studs like Josh Jacobs who can score multiple touchdowns, studs like Davante Adams who can score multiple touchdowns, I won't throw Jimmy Garoppolo into that same group, but a starting quarterback at less than 10% MVP, I would go super heavy on Raiders MVPs in the larger GPPs tonight. Go all in on maybe two if you want to mix in Garoppolo as well. Just incredible leverage when you get all these guys at basically half or a third of the MVP ownership that we would normally see them at while having high flex ownership. So really great way to differentiate from the lineups in the field that use Jacobs, Adams, and Garoppolo, not all three together, but just in some capacity, by playing one of them at MVP. We got Jacobs. Let's actually look at the occupied model, what we have projected for FanDuel MVP. Goff and Gibbs, 27%. St. Brown, 18%. And then we have Adams, 11%. Jacobs, 8%. Garoppolo, 7%. Again, Davante Adams, 11% MVP. When can you get that? Josh Jacobs, 8%. Multi-touchdown upside. You can't. I would go all in on Adams and Jacobs, maybe mixing Garoppolo if I'm playing the largest GPP on FanDuel tonight. Small field, you probably still want to stick to the usual suspects, Goff, Gibbs, St. Brown. If it's a little bit larger, because when you think of leagues on FanDuel, 100 players, 200 players, smaller GPPs, you can stick with the chalkier MVPs, get different in one spot in your flex. Once you get to the 5, 6, 700 player GPPs, that's when you can start to think about the Las Vegas guys, and especially, obviously, the 150 max and the 20 max GPPs. All right, that will do it for this video. Make sure you're subscribed here on YouTube. It is free to do so. Just click the subscribe button below this video. Let's go back to DraftKings here. I come out with these videos every Monday and Thursday for showdown slates. We go live on Saturdays for the NFL main slate, and our writer Chris does a main slate top play video on Friday evenings. Subscribing is the best way to get notified when these videos go live, or if we go live. That way you're notified when they're uploaded or when we go live. Now, if you're an NBA DFS fan, if you're getting into NBA, if you've been playing NBA DFS, our NBA team, I've been so impressed. They've been doing a fantastic job every single day so far the NBA season. They go live every single day. It's crazy to me to think about them doing that. But our team goes live a couple hours before lock. Subscribing is the best way to get notified when they go live. If you play NBA DFS, invaluable resource to get slate notes, injury news, take your questions live. Subscribe on YouTube. It's the best way to do it. Give us a thumbs up if you like this video. We appreciate it. Let's see if we can get to 300 likes. I know in the past we've gotten to 200. Let's see if we can beat that record. Let's get to 300. Shows your support. Shows that you want me and us to continue to create these types of videos here on YouTube for free. Any questions, I will monitor the YouTube channel throughout the day. Make sure you comment below with any questions, comments, thoughts. I'll get back to you if you have a specific question. I know a lot of you like to give your opinions. A lot of you like to respond to other people's opinions. Put those opinions in the comments in the comment section below. And if you want in-depth conversations, make sure you check out our Discord server, occupyfantasy.com/Discord. Link is in the description below. Chat with other members of the community. Chat with the staff for all sports. And you saw the Occupy model on screen. Get access to that as well as our daily plug, which is a full roadmap to the slate, a write-up with top plays, lineup construction tips, slate notes. That goes live this afternoon. And our lineup builder allows you to build up to 300 showdown lineups on FanDuel or DraftKings using our optimal lineup criteria and our Occupy model values. All of that is available at occupyfantasy.com. Make sure you check it out if you want that extra edge for your showdown contest. So, Brian Jester, Occupy Fantasy, thank you for listening, and good luck in tonight's showdown slate.